Hey, Pepin.
Yo, 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 yo.
I've been thinking a lot lately about uh, sitting in trees.
Ooh, like sitting in trees, like kissing people, because that's like the song.
What?
No, not quite like the song. Much less kissing.
Oh, that's sad. Sally's gonna be very disappointed.
Well, I'm leaving then. I was
Oh,
told there would be kissing.
oh, oh. Who are you again?
Oh, I'm Patrick. I'm just your co-collaborator. No
Oh
big
yeah. Is this like a three-way? A threesome?
deal. Is it? I'm excited.
Guys, I think we need to talk. Welcome back. So glad you guys could join us. I am here once again with my best friend Nathan Pepin. How's it going today, Pepin?
Yo, doing well? Hey, Meader, your voice is extra grovelly. Have you been doing some singing, some screaming?
No, actually. Instead, we got a really good mic that actually picks up on the basses very, very well, and I'm using it for the show. And that was gotten to me by my good friend Nathan Pepin.
Oh, well, thank you, Nathan Pepin. Very much appreciated. Thank you for donating to the show.
And today we have a super special guest, one of our favorite people to have on the show, and your co-host on Damn Podcast, Patrick. How's it going today?
Awesome. Glad to be here.
And so the audience is aware, this is like a episode where I'm doing an episode for Damn, and we need to talk at the same time. That way I can do less editing. This is all what this is about right here.
Yeah, we're streamlining. we're pretty lazy, so
Streamlining. That is a much better way to put it. I dig that.
And so the topic that I was thinking we discuss today, because I think this might be kind of interesting, because we have two dualities here, is hunting. Is hunting ethical? What is hunting in a way, right? I mean, that getting the definitions right, but also, what is it bad? Is it evil? Is it murder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great because...
Okay, well that should be interesting.
So my perspective is, I don't know. It's like, I think everything's about where you are in your current state of society, because obviously the more that you are, say, needing to hunt because there's no available resources, or let's say nuclear, warhead goes off, or I don't know, state of survival. Who cares? Like, I think it's amoral at that point. So it's not regarding morality, because morality comes in when you have a choice. But even then, I think, we kill people all the time. Animals are just another kind of thing. We're animals. So, it's just kind of how things work. So I think don't be cruel. I don't think you should go above and beyond in, like, say, taking pleasure in the killing, but or the killing for no reason exactly. But if you're getting meat from it and you're harvesting it, I think that's fine. How about yourself, Peter? I know that you actually do some hunting yourself.
I do. I bow hunt for white-tailed deer.
How long have you been doing that for?
I gun hunted when I was 15 one season. And then I went off to college and I didn't hunt again until not 2020 season, but 2019 was the first season that I hunted again. And then I hunted only with a bow, and then I hunted. So that's been 2 seasons now. So technically 3 full seasons.
Right. And you've been hunting with your dad, or have you been hunting on your own?
I've been hunting with my dad and uncle and sister's boyfriend mostly. I have gone out once with a good friend as well, a little more locally to me, because I hunt right now on some land that my family owns back in Maine. So it's like an hour and a half drive for me to go there, and you have to be there wicked early in the morning, so I have to get up at like 3 a.m. It's pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm. And for you, what kind of draws you towards hunting? Is it just like a family sort of thing, or is it something you think you'd be interested in regardless of your family upbringing?
I mean, it started mostly as a family related thing. But it was also, it was a good way for me to connect with my dad, and for me to learn what could be an extremely valuable skill if ever I was in a position to need to know how to do that skill. And then once I actually took a deer, it was completely different fish, because that experience is completely unrelatable to anything else I've done.
So comparing it to fishing, so you've done a lot of fishing in your past too?
I've done fishing, yep.
And how would you find, like, you're saying that fishing is a little bit different than like killing a deer? It's a little bit more intense, or rather the other way around. Killing a deer is a bit more intense than this fishing.
Fishing is nothing. Fishing's like boring compared to hunting.
And your dad, how long has your dad been hunting? He's been doing it for a while, or is it just kind of like
life? Yeah,
I see. So he's a bit more of a hunter than you, but it's something that you kind of picked up from him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a family thing. My grandfather taught my dad, and his dad taught his dad, and blah 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 blah. So my great grandmother is 100% Native American, so it goes all the way back to like super ancestral, just being passed down the way to do this, do it right, do it in a clean, ethical way, but also to have that skill has been passed down through our family.
Right. And when you said clean, ethical way, so that kind of comes to like the main crux of this. So the ethics of it, what do you think the ethics of hunting, and it's like, let's say fishing as well, 'cause I think fishing sounds like it's a little bit different. I mean, people kind of see it a little bit different, but would you say where you fall down in the ethics of it?
As long as you're using what you're taking, you're not just doing it for sport. I see no direct ethical issue.
And doing it for sport, just meaning like you kill the animal, but you don't really do anything with it, or you just kind of hang up as a trophy.
Yeah, you're not eating it. You're not eating it. You're not using any part of it. You're just killing it because you want to say, "Hey, I killed a thing."
And that's kind of like the instance. Actually, no, I can't say that, because there's a whole like thing where they're shooting lions in some place in like Africa or something, and I think there's that one big one where some lion had a name and people got super upset about it. But then it's extra confusing because they have like a population problem, and those lions will like invade people's like land. So they actually put these permits out to shoot them, especially for like, people who just want to go out and do it. And that way they can control the population. So there's a little bit confusing there, but essentially if it's not for something that's utility, then it's kind of like for sport essentially, or it could be for sport but for utility as well.
If you're talking about a safety issue, I think that's a completely different conversation.
So Meader, you seem to have a bit of the same idea I do. I'm a bit more wishy-washy on it, to be honest, but let's get over to Patrick here. Patrick, where do you think your thoughts are? Where do you stand ethically on it? Have you ever hunted or fished? And how does that inform anything?
So I have gone fishing, but I've never caught anything, so I can't say that I have any experience with that. And I've never been hunting. So I think that I agree with Meader as far as if you're using everything and there's some form of utility and the animal doesn't suffer, then I wouldn't say that I'm opposed to hunting in that context. But as usual, I'm going to be a little bit specific about the definition of morality here, because I think that two things can be happening. I think that the hunting could be necessary and that there could be utility in it, but I think that it could still be immoral to kill something. Now, does that mean that we're always 100% moral, or that we are required to be? Not necessarily, but I don't think that you can say that killing something is ever 100% moral act, even if there is utility involved. I mean, what do you think about that statement?
I mean, just to recapitulate that, and also, first thing is, just for people who have context, Patrick are you still vegetarian?
I'm not, but I spent almost 2 years being a vegetarian.
Right. So Patrick was a vegetarian. Is that a recent change that you stopped doing it?
Yes, and it's not when I went vegetarian, just for context, it was not entirely a moral decision. It was more or less for health reasons, but also I don't like the idea of killing animals, so that for me was part of it. But it is it is something that becomes impractical over time, especially when it's part of your society, that it's going to happen either way. My eating meat or not eating meat has very little impact on society. And so, I didn't have any illusions going into being vegetarian that I was going to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it felt like something I wanted to try and see if I was capable of doing.
Right.
My family didn't agree, so it became very difficult to, cook 2 different meals every night. And
Yeah. So more of a personal decision. And if I can recapitulate your claim there, it's that killing anything does have some sort of negative moral implication to it. And things which are, say, more sentient have a higher degree of immorality. So killing like an insect or like a mosquito, that probably doesn't mean too much. But killing like a fish, maybe it's a little bit worse than killing a mosquito, or maybe a lot worse. But killing a deer or like a cow or something that has more of a full, say, developed brain, that is like, that could be potentially bad in certain circumstances. I think we can agree, because I think we'll agree that maybe killing for sport is not good, or that's immoral. But in the case of, to say, hunting, there's some degree of immorality to that.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to say what that degree is, because from a Buddhist perspective, there's two kind of thoughts there. The first thought is that all sentient beings are valuable, right? That whether it's a mosquito or a cow or a human, that they all bear some kind of value. And that's, speaks to the theory of reincarnation. But then also, if you think about reincarnation itself and how it is alleged to work in terms of reaching the highest goal of Buddhism, which is nirvana, that if you do well in this life, so allegedly you would be reincarnated into another form that was perhaps a little bit greater than the previous form. So maybe if you were a mosquito in one life, you're going to come back as a dog if you do well as a mosquito, right? So if you subscribe to that school of thought, then yes, killing a dog would be a little bit less moral than killing a mosquito.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you agree with that kind of sense of morality there? Because I can kind of see, like, I don't know if it's necessarily true, because I think a lot of morality type stuff, like, depends on the context that you're in. Because if you're in a state of morality, a state of survival, like a pure state of nature, like, I don't think really morality applies there. But when you kind of constrain, like, say that we're in a, say, stable society, then I think you can maybe start making those claims. Because, killing a mosquito, I don't think, two things about it. But, killing a fish or killing like a deer, or doing any sort of hunting, that would kind of, it seems a bit more to me. Meader, do you have like a similar sense, or do you agree, disagree on that?
I think hunting and killing a deer is more moral than eating hamburger that you buy from a grocery store. That deer has had a chance at living its life in the wild. It had freedom, and it lost in a battle of nature between two beasts, especially if I'm using a bow. I think with a gun, it's kind of like cheating. But a bow is very mechanical. It's in a sense, but not in the same way as a gun. A gun is like, you point and you shoot, it's dead. It's pretty cut and dry. But an arrow, there's so much that goes into that. There's so much more that you need to like be ready for, and there's the draw factor where you have to be able to position yourself right and draw, and you have to wait for it to be close enough. There's just a lot more that goes into it. So I feel like it's a more fair battle between predator and prey, and that the deer has actually had a chance at life, and died in its environment, versus a cow that lived its whole life just to be slaughtered in like a manufactured setting. I think that is less moral than taking something from nature.
I actually think I agree with that, because I think if you look at, like, take humans out of the equation, if you're looking at different, as you described them, beasts in the wild, right? How does anything eat? Well, it has to go out and find its food, right? So if you're a carnivore, then that means taking down another animal. So in the sense where if you're hunting for subsistence and you're using everything that you get from the animal, that's not a whole lot different than what happens in the animal kingdom already. I don't know if I buy into the distinction between bow hunting and gun hunting, only because part of our advantage, you could say, is that we have the ability to critically think and use tools. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could almost say that like a lion going after a gazelle is a little bit of an unfair advantage for the lion because the gazelle doesn't really have anything to defend itself. So us using a gun is kind of like a lion pouncing onto a gazelle. So I don't know that there's really a distinction, but I do, however, agree with you about hunting in the wild.
I want to follow up there because if there is no distinction between those two, then that kind of, I think, cuts off the head on the claim that one is worse than the other. Because essentially, like a gun is better than a bow, let's say, at killing the animal. But we're being smart. But then you can, kind of go up this chain of utility. And essentially, what we do with factory farms is just the highest chain of tool and utility applied to that problem. If the problem is getting subsistence from animals, we're using our fences. We're using, advanced breeding technology. We're using, selective breeding. I guess that's selective breeding. But we use, certain kind of tools to behead them, get the meat from them. We always use all these things to kind of extract the most value of this animal. Now, does the animal have a good life or anything? No, but if we're looking at tool and technology, like if you can include, say, the factory farm or farm into that group of category of tool which is used to gain that subsistence, then I don't think there's any differentiation there. And that's kind of my claim there. So either the bow is better because it gives that animal more of a chance, or it's kind of more, I say, natural. I don't think the natural argument's that great, but you could say it's that. But I don't think it's between the bow and the gun, or I think either the bow is better and the gun's worse, or neither is worse, including the factory farm.
Well, I don't know. I think there's something else to it, because you're right from a tool standpoint. Like, yeah, we could make all those things that essentially make meat farming, easier than hunting. And so therefore it because it's within our capacity. I get what you're saying, but there's another.
A farm is just it's just a plot of land with like walls around it, right? You just fence it out, right? And this makes the hunting easier because that your prey is localized to this one region. And then you can kind of start priming your prey to try to make them fatter. There's all these different things you can do, and it starts getting more and more abstract the further away you go from it. But I think essentially it's the same thing. It's just more abstract.
You're saying a farm is a gun that takes 8 years to kill something.
Yes,
but it's not hunting, though. That's the distinction. Is okay, if we're talking about whether hunting is moral, there's no difference between using a gun or a bow in terms of hunting if you're hunting for subsistence, because the purpose of it is not the weapon used, but the purpose of it is the result of the hunting. And so if you are looking at farming, the reason it's different is because it's in excess, right? So if, let's say, we as humans consume way more than we need, right? That's a known fact about our species. We destroy ecosystems, and basically everything that we do is destructive to the environment around us. And that's because we take things in excess, right? If we only hunted what we need, then it would be a much different world. When we get into this like artificial manufacturing of chickens and cows and all that, right? The difference is the excess, is that we don't need to breed all these animals specifically for killing. I mean, how much food do you think that we throw away every year? You look at how much chicken exactly they put on the shelves in grocery stores, and you can go in any given day and you can see that there are packages and packages with the stickers on them, right? We got to sell them by today, so they're discounted, or we're going to throw them away, right? We don't need all that food. That's the distinction, I think.
My thought is that's kind of like an added moral quality added to it. It's like you have the question of whether it's functionally equivalent, but then you also have the question of whether there's another moral aspect to it. All right. But I don't know. I'm still not sure. I still need to think about that. Meader, do I make sense at all? Does Patrick make sense? Or do you have your own kind of idea on this topic?
No, Nate, you're completely missing the entire point of the humanity of hunting, of what makes it morally acceptable over a farm that is just slaughtering things, like those chicken farms that have them so packed in they can't move. It's the quality of life leading up to their death. We are all given life, and at some point we will die. If in between we're able to live a life that is natural and free, and we're able to actually experience life, then I think that there is value in that is the humanity of hunting, where that is completely stripped away on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest difference for me where it becomes humane to be able to hunt versus mass farming on a level that the animals have no life.
I see. So the distinction there between hunting and, say, farming is, the held in captivity, I guess, or like the constrained living arrangement.
Yeah, and I mean, your argument about the farm being a tool isn't 100% wrong, but I think it completely misses the point that the farm it's arguable that you could say, if you're calling the farm a weapon against these animals, that it's inhumane. It's an inhumane weapon, and therefore a bow would be way better, because and so would a gun at that point, because you're not killing them over the course of 8 years. They're living their entire life, and their death is within minutes, versus having their whole life be their death.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, if you had a farm which was, say, more ethical in its raising of animals, would that be more okay? Let's say, like, you have like a 10-mile stretch. I'm not sure how much for, like, say, deer. Let's say you have like a 10-mile farm, essentially, where essentially this open range is almost pure natural. They can't go outside that 10-mile footage, but they can live within that confines. Is that more okay? Because they have more of a natural life.
Talking about there's a very big distinction between farming and hunting.
Yep.
They are not the same thing. The second you put up a fence, that is no longer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
There are big expansive ranches that people go to for hunting trips, where they're guaranteed a deer pretty much. They put out food to make sure the deer come, and they know that all of these deer are within this 10-mile ranch, and then they sit in a blind right in front of that pile of food, and then they shoot a deer, and they're like, oh, I hunted. That is not hunting. That is farming.
I want to say I didn't know that was a thing, but then I'm recalling like that whole like British thing where they release like foxes or something, and they like catch the foxes and I don't know, with dogs or something. But yeah, that stuff's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. And okay, so the thing is, the animal might not know. So you're saying, is it more moral for a 10-mile farm or whatever, and the animal lives most of its life, and then it's killed around the time it would naturally die anyway? I mean, that doesn't happen often. Usually they're killed at different times, but the point is, the animal might not know because it doesn't have the same critical thinking or ability to discern that we do as humans. But we know that we're confining the animals, and we are constraining the life that they would naturally live. So if the conversation today is specifically about the moral implications of hunting, so if we knowingly strip away the animal's ability to live its natural life, then there is some moral implication to that. Versus if all living things were allowed to go about their lives, and at some point that life came to a natural end, and maybe that's through the utility of hunting. And as long as it is something that is for utility, then that would be the lowest moral implication.
Yeah, I don't know, because this is where I'm a little bit lost. Maybe this is a little too philosophical for the conversation. Well, if you give an animal the illusion of a natural life, and that natural life is almost exclusive, it's like it's almost a one-to-one mapping of what they would actually have. A fence is something, right? That's a very, very like human sort of thing. But the animals come into fences all the time, like natural fences, like walls. These giant stretches of granite and stuff, like just natural fences that are out there. Giant lakes that they can't go through. So there's natural things which kind of say stop them from going forward. And the fact that we're making one, that's certainly a difference to us, right, as far as our conceptual point of view. But if we give the animal the illusion of, say, some sort of a freedom or open range, I don't see how that's different. Maybe it's different for us, but how is that like I can understand like not making the animal suffer because the animal is actually having some sort of negative experience. But from this animal's perspective, it's having no negative experience. It's living its life just as it would before.
It's not different for the animal, you're right, or it may not be. And this goes to a podcast that you and I have done on the Damn podcast about whether perception is greater than reality. And I do think that perception is greater than reality in most cases. And for the animal, perhaps the perception of living a free life is greater than the reality of being captive. But morality is a transcendent subject, meaning that it's not impacted by perception necessarily. I mean, you might say that it is because your perspective on morality is different than mine, but we had this discussion actually in another one with the three of us, where in my opinion, morality is universal. It has a transcendent quality, and people might disagree on it, but if we are knowingly doing something that restricts that animal's ability to live a full life, there's still a moral implication to that, even if the perception of the animal is that there's no difference. Do you see what I'm saying?
Maybe I'm thinking about this too low level. Meader, am I missing something still here? I probably am.
You're missing intention.
Intention?
Yes.
So the intention of the fence is the intention of a body of water to block the deer in. No, it's just a natural thing. Now, if you dig a moat, that the intention of that moat is to keep the deer in, then that becomes a cage.
And I'm trying to think of other examples where intention affects morality. I can think of one. Like, let's say that, like, you're washing your window at a 20-story building, and then you fall out the window and you land into somebody's patio, and you have to get out through the front door, but then they catch you and they're like, oh, you broke into my house. Like, no, I didn't. And that your intention wasn't to break in. You just kind of got back, caught into a bad circumstance. So the law probably wouldn't give you that exception there. They'd probably be like, okay, yeah, you entered this person's house unlawfully, but you did it because you just had some bad luck and fell through your window. So that I could see the intention not mattering, or mattering a lot. So I suppose the intention could matter, but is that more like a thing for us? In my example, there's a functional thing there where the breaking and entering is the issue. But here, this sounds like a sugar on top for our own peace of mind.
So the difference is that laws are man-made constructs, and that morality, again, is a transcendent concept. And so there could be a law that doesn't directly align with morality, because it's not always the case. I mean, and I don't want to get too deep into this because it's controversial, but I'm just saying a great example of this is abortion. Throughout history, there's been different perspectives on it. But whether there's a law that is for or against abortion is completely different than whether it's a moral act, right? So just because there are laws that govern certain things, or there might be consequences, those don't always directly correlate to the morality of a particular action.
Would you say then that the morality of that action is just more opaque, or a little bit harder to grasp and not straightforward? Because if someone happens to enter your property but they didn't intend to, then you give them a chance to exit. That's kind of the moral kind of solution to the problem, whereas kind of more blunt solution is thou shall not enter my property under any circumstance. That's not quite a good moral standard because it doesn't exclude these kind of exceptions.
I'd have to think about this for a second, because I think the breaking and entering one is a little bit difficult because there is a perception challenge there. If you don't have all the information and you're on the receiving end of that, particularly maybe you have a family that you need to protect, there's definitely some perception there. But keep in mind that you could make what you believe at the time, based on the information that you have, you could make a decision that would maximize the utility, or the decision that you feel at the time would be the most moral, but at the same time, it could be immoral because you're missing information.
Right. Well, in that case, it wouldn't be the best decision to make, but you couldn't be blamed for the information you had. If someone comes up to you and they have a gun and they shoot you, but then ends up being a squirt gun, but you think it's a real gun, so you take your gun out and shoot them. You thought they're going to shoot you with a real gun, right? So from your perspective, your shooting of them was actually defending themselves. When it comes down to it, they were just, trying to play a prank on you. A really bad prank, which you never do, obviously. But, like, I don't think you would actually have been convicted of murder in that case, or at least
That's
morally.
true. I mean, that's why there's a distinction between manslaughter and murder, right? Because mistakes do happen, but there's still some moral implication to those mistakes. They're not as great. I mean, if you took out a gun and shot somebody in cold blood for no reason, that's a much greater moral implication than shooting someone in self-defense on accident. But there's still a moral implication. It's like there's this thing out there where people say there's a just war theory. And this is allegedly a way that you can say there are certain circumstances where war is justified, right? Now, is justified the same thing as moral? If you're a soldier going into a just war, can you say that every person that you killed in the name of that just war was moral? I wouldn't say that you can, not 100%. And you can say that the reasons were important, but there's still going to be some implication there that you killed other human beings.
Mm-hmm. Meader, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's super interesting, Pepin, that every time we're talking today about morality and like whether something's moral or not, you keep bringing it back to the justice system and like somebody being arrested. Like, how does that the justice system that the humans have put into place has nothing to do with morality? They're not one for one.
So, Meader, you bring up a great point, and a point that I think I am going to take a week to think over. And then after that week, I will finish the rest of this episode and publish it. Because, hey, this one's running a little long. Yeah, this is what this is. This is me cutting the episode short. So, hey, next week, let's talk about this again. Because we need to talk.